You are listening to the We Are West Ham podcast with me, Will Pugh, and my mate, James Jones. West Ham United kicked off the season in so underwhelming fashion with a 1-1 draw away to Bournemouth, who only a few months ago at the end of the last Premier League season, we gave an absolute walloping to Jared Bowen with a screamer to open the score in 51 minutes. And Dominic Solanke, who, Graham Nicholas, Bournemouth journalist, came on the podcast last week and said was a complete and utter waste of money if West Ham were to sign him. There's no way he'll score goals in the Premier League. James Jones had taken aim at him on Twitter, saying it's an so typical West Ham United signing because he scored about 6 goals in 7,004 professional games or something like that. So, of course, it was him who was going to up his tally, his career tally, to the grand old total of 7 or whatever it is, Jonesy, who made it 1-1 at the end of that game at the Vitality. A bit of an underwhelming start to the season. We were calling it a must-win, or we were trying not to call it a must-win before the game. It does feel like that with the fixtures we've got coming up. And, yeah, hard not to be a bit meh about a 1-1 draw away to Bournemouth.
I'm still trying to work out whether it's 2 points dropped or a good point away from home in the Premier League.
It's the first.
I can't. I don't know. Like, first game of the season. Players are obviously a little bit rusty. We've got a weaker team than we did when we battered them 4-0 at the end of last season. See no Declan Rice in midfield. We've still got Antonio leading the line. So I wasn't overly surprised that we didn't come out the blocks and batter them 4-0. I think in the last game we're 3-0 up inside half an hour, I think. So I wasn't surprised that wasn't the case. But it does feel like 2 points dropped because, no disrespect to Bournemouth, but we should be beating them away from home regardless. But we hit the post twice. Good finish from Bowen, but we've hit the post twice. Their goal is massively fortunate. I don't care if it's Solanke or not. I knew he'd score. I had a feeling he'd do it after we took the mick out of him a little bit last week. But, that ball takes a deflection off Souček, lands at his feet. Anyone scoring that. Danny Ings is scoring that if that's down the other end. Nothing you can do about a deflection. It lands at his feet. I mean, I don't even think he couldn't believe it when the ball landed at his feet. He's got to do his round areola. So their goal was rather fortunate. He's still got to finish it, obviously, but it's still rather fortunate that it's landed at his feet. So a point was probably a fair result, which is why I'm like, is it 2 points dropped? It's a fair result. It wasn't like we absolutely battered them and couldn't get the ball over the line, couldn't get the 3 points. And it wasn't as if they battered us and we got away with it and nicked a point. Probably a fair result in the end, I think, mate.
Yeah, I think my point is that do we want to be, and should we be, not should we, should is a rubbish word, isn't it? That's the sort of word that offends teams like Brighton and Bournemouth when you say we should be. Yep. Anyone that you say on this podcast, which you do way more than me, that West Ham should be beating, guarantee loads of their fan base get immediately offended when you say that. But all I mean is, it might have been a fair result based on the way the game went, but with the games we've got coming up, and ultimately, look, I've made this point since the game, is that if West Ham want to be finishing in the top half of the table, right, and floating around those European spots again, which it's fair to say most of the fan base think we should be, you have to win, 5 or 6 away games a season, plus all your home points, obviously. You probably have to pick up 5 or 6 wins on the road around that number, depending on your home form, obviously. But so to do that, you've got to be targeting the teams who are likely to finish in the bottom 5 or 6 places this season. I'm fairly certain Bournemouth will be one of those. And with the games we've got coming up next, when there's definitely going to be a few defeats in there, I don't know. I just think that it's definitely 2 points dropped because, you've got to look at that's just one. People would argue if you're going to get 5 or 6 away games a season, they would put that up there, especially after what happened in the last campaign, as one of the ones to target. I think David Moyes probably done that as well.
I don't disagree with that. And if you were to compare what we do this season to say the corresponding results last season, like we're already 2 points down. So if you're going to match it up, we end the season with 38 points at the moment. If you match it up, which is obviously, could potentially be relegation. So that side, you look at that side and go, okay, it's a terrible result. But if you do, you end up matching it, and you go, okay, well, we're technically two points down on what already than what we would have done last season. So, I don't know. I'm reserving full judgment on the team until we get to the end of the window. Obviously, the next few fixtures are almost write-offs. It sounds ridiculous to say, but the way that we've played, the state the squad's in. You don't see us picking up many points over the next few games. So depends what we do between now and the end of the season business-wise, and then we can go into the transfer window business-wise, and then we go again. But what is it they say? It's a marathon, not a sprint. There's still 37 games to go. Let's not be too negative.
No, I totally understand. I'm too negative about it, but I am. But I just people say that as if the points now matter any less. It's like you all of a sudden start getting more points in April for a win. You don't. If we'd have won yesterday, that would have been worth just as many as a win later on in the season. And with the games we've got coming up, I think a win would have given us a bit of confidence, a bit of momentum. And when Bournemouth at the end of the season finished 16th, I think you're going, should have won that. But then again, we'll probably be 18th. So I don't suppose it matters as much. But just a reminder, Chelsea at home next on Sunday, then Brighton away, Luton away, their first home game at Kenilworth Road in the Prem. Man City at home, Liverpool away. So, and then that's in the league. Obviously, we've got Sheffield United at home. Then Newcastle at home, Aston Villa away, Everton at home. Genuinely, Everton at home is on the 28th of October. That's 2 and a bit months until I can see us maybe winning a game in the Prem. God.
Well, Sheffield United, we should be Sheffield United. They're still a championship squad. We should be beaten. I don't care offending Sheffield United fans either, so we should be beating Sheffield United. You do see us. You do see us losing at Luton, didn't you? Because it's their first, similar to Forest last year, their first game back in the Prem for all those years, and they just beat us, and you saw that coming a mile off. But I mean, it could be a complete disaster this time in 2 months' time. But let's stay positive. We've got James Ward-Prowse now, mate. He's the same.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, James Ward-Prowse's signing announced this morning, 30 million quid from Southampton. You know what, Jonesy? I think you better do a lot of the talking because I'm not. I know he's good at free kicks and corners. I know that, and that is obviously a good skill to have. I'm just a little bit concerned that how he's going to fit in the system. I've said it before. He needs quick, athletic players around him, and he's going to be playing alongside Thomas Souček. What Edson Alvarez's arrival means for Souček. Souček's just signed a new deal. Lots of things to talk about on the show this week. James, Alphonse Areola replaces Lucas Fabianski in goal. Not sure how I feel about that one, but we'll have a chat about that too. We've got a packed show coming up. Me and Jonesy will talk in more detail about that Bournemouth game. Next, later on at the end of the show, we'll speak to comedian and West Ham fan, social media comedian and West Ham fan, Rob Morgan. He does some absolutely hilarious Twitter videos. At Robbie Morgs is his Twitter if you don't follow him already. Lots of West Ham content and just general stuff, particularly if you're a fan of the 90s. So we speak to Rob later on. We speak to Stamford Chidge, Dave Chidgey, a long-term friend of the podcast and of me and James, a big-time cheese on the Chelsea fan cast ahead of Sunday's game at home to Chelsea in the Premier League after their 2-2 draw at the weekend at home to Liverpool. We'll have the Betway charity bets. James came mighty close to pulling his 251 shot in when Jared Bowen bent in that sumptuous effort at Bournemouth. We'll have the Betway charity bets, like I said, and then some final thoughts from me and Jonesy. A packed show as always. Don't forget you can follow us on social media, Twitter at @WeAre_West Ham. I'm at William Pugh _ James is at by James Jones. You can get us on Instagram at We Are West Ham Pod. We're We Are West Ham Podcast on YouTube. You can email us at wearewesthampod@gmail.com, or you can buy us a pint if you want. at buymeacoffee.com/wearewestham. All that money goes straight to me and Jonesy, and we either spend it on beers or podcast equipment, guest fees, whatever it is, to make the show better for you guys. We're on TikTok as well, so you can get us over there. But yeah, we, as always, pushing the YouTube channel subscription. James does a sterling job over there, so go over and hit subscribe if you like what we're up to. We can get all the clips from the show. Josie, what have you been up to then? What's new? Obviously, we went straight into West Ham chat then. Anything exciting, interesting happening in the week since we last spoke? You've had a new haircut, I think.
Yeah, I had a haircut the weekend. Very short.
Decent.
Looking at it now.
Well, I quite like it. Yeah, not a fan of the short.
I mean, I've probably gone a little bit shorter than I would normally, but it's all right. It just means it's just a little bit longer until I have to pay for another one, which is good. But I went along with Harrison, took Harrison along.
Cost of living crisis and all that.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. But it's the first time that Harrison sat in the chair on his own. Normally sits on my lap to have his haircut, but this time on the drive in, he goes, "Daddy, can I sit on my own today?" And I was like, "Yeah, absolutely, mate." So that was good. So yeah, he's happy. But yeah, other than that, not a lot's happened over the last week. Yeah, he's fine. Yeah, you just put YouTube on the phone for him and he just watches it.
The We Are West Ham podcast, I assume.
Oh yeah. Of course, nothing. That's where all our views come from. He just watches. I make him watch that back to back.
Exactly, mate. Happy days. Was he?
It's all good.
Did he say it was too short for his liking, or?
No, he's got no choice. So the girl asked me what I wanted him to have. I said it, and then she did it, and she did a very good job. He looks very smart now.
Excellent.
But yeah, he's happy.
And then you told her what you wanted, and she just did something completely different.
She absolutely ruined it. Yeah, but nice. She's my regular. She's mine and Harrison's regular. We always pick her. So she's getting there. She's finally getting used to what I like.
Yeah. Excellent, mate. I mean, after the midlife crisis chat last week about whether or not you're having an affair or not, if you cut away the context of the fact that she's your hairdresser at the beginning, it did sound a little bit suspect.
Yeah, it does. Yeah, it does sound suspect. I mean,
back at home.
She is my hairdresser, and all she does is cut my hair. That's it.
Right. Okay. Yeah. All you actually said was she's your regular, and she's getting used to what you like. So, I've had a haircut since we last spoke, Jonesy. To be fair, but I left it a lot longer than I usually do. So,
that's nice.
I'm not offended for you not noticing. Yeah. I mean, not a great deal going on, really, is there? Just back to the grind, back to the Premier League grind. You got a new job yet? People are sort of engaged in your. No, you've left your job.
No, well, I've been in conversations with a few businesses. Got a couple of potential consultancy jobs on the horizon, and I've had one interview, and I've got a couple of others lined up over the next week. So, plenty going on. I'm still technically working, so I'm very busy at the moment. I said to Lucy the other day, I was quit my job. I've never been more busy. It's crazy. I thought I'd be able to put my feet up, and instead it's the opposite. Breaking my heart.
Yeah. Fair play. Well, just hope that any potential new employers can overlook your new haircut. I'm sure they'll be able to see your professional capabilities as opposed to just your barnet. Let's talk about West Ham and We've got loads coming up on the show today. It promises to be a long one, so let's dive straight in. Review of that 1-1 draw at Bournemouth next. Well done, Jonesy. An absolute screamer from Jared Bowen. He is clearly going to be the talisman at West Ham this season. It was an absolute peach of a goal. That gives me reason for positivity and reason for hope. But what did you make of the whole performance? I'm assuming, and please do correct me if I'm wrong and forgive me if I'm saying anything slanderous, but I've just got a feeling that you were just sitting on your laptop and a screen happened to pop up with the game on it again?
No. This time I was out watching Bury St Edmunds Rugby Club play Blackheath.
I saw that.
I was at the local rugby club. Yeah. So I went out and watched that. So I was getting the updates on my phone. It didn't just happen to stumble across a website showing it this weekend. Although I would have done. I probably would have done if I'd have stayed at home.
Was the Bury St Edmunds rugby game against Blackheath any more or less entertaining than West Ham versus Bournemouth?
Yeah, I mean, it was quite intense. They're only pre-season friendly, so it's 3 halves, 3 30-minute halves rather than 2 40-minute halves. So yeah, it was good fun to watch. Yeah, good laugh.
Yeah. You're thinking of playing, are you? Reviving your career?
I can't, unfortunately. I'd love to, but I can't. My shoulders are too weak after many a dislocated shoulder back in my playing days. So it would be stupid of me to start playing again. But I would love to. But I managed to catch up on some of the highlights, and my mates were keeping me well informed because they happened to be just looking at the looking on websites and happened to find it online. So, and they were going, yeah, do you know what? It's a pretty bog standard performance. Bournemouth have had more of the ball, but we look okay going forward in phases, but still a little bit weak in the final third. And just that was the story of our season last season, wasn't it? No problem with the build-up play. It's just getting the final third, and we ended up panicking a little bit. And it sounds like that's the story of it, really. You hit the work twice. You get you usual suspects. Yeah, they hit the bar. You get your usual suspects, playing well. Obviously, Bowen's, I think it's probably one of his best goals for us. I think it was a great finish. Paqueta, pulling the strings, defensively okay. Just an annoying little deflection that lands at Solanke for their goal towards the end. So, from what I've seen, from what I've heard, I don't think it was a terrible performance. I think it was, probably very typical of your first game of the season. Players still getting into their groove. But at the same time, an element of the team being still a little bit stale and not having been refreshed during the summer. So Edson Alvarez not ready, wasn't even on the bench. Probably just needs an injection of freshness in certain areas, particularly the midfield.
Yeah, no, I tend to agree with you there. A couple of changes to the squad. Obviously, it was Pablo Fornals, Ben Rama and Bowen started, which I don't know. I imagine you'll see probably a bit more of that this season, particularly if David Moyes afterwards, we'll talk about this in a minute, saying Jared Bowen could play up front immediately, head in hands there. Obviously stung by not buying a natural striker. He's been our best player last season in the right wing position. Just because he's good, so leave him there and buy someone else who could be good up front. Don't just move him, and then you lose that impact. Absolutely bizarre thinking. The back four, though, is sort of semi-new look, I would argue. Emerson, Aguerd, Zuma and Soufal, Areola in goal. Zuma captained the side. You think that'll be a permanent fixture, or do you think that's going to go elsewhere?
It seems that way. I don't know why you'd pick a captain for the first game of the season if you're not intended for him to be the captain for the rest of the season. It's not probably wouldn't have been my pick, but then again, I'm not in and amongst the squad all day every day and seeing the qualities that they have. So if he is the captain for the rest of the season, great. I would be a little bit surprised because he has injury tendencies, doesn't he? You're going to lose him for 5-10 games throughout the season.
Always limping.
Yeah, you're going to lose him for 5-10 games, around about 5-10 games of the season at some point. Do you really want your captain to have that risk behind him? I don't know. Or unless it's a case of they've left it a week, and then maybe it's James Ward-Prowse, because in the Moyes has said in his quotes after signing and that he's got leadership qualities, and I wonder whether that might be a hint that James Ward-Prowse is going to come straight in and get the armband. It'd be a surprise, but you just don't know, do you? There's been no hint, really.
Do you give the armband to your captain? Sorry, you do give the armband to your captain.
You do, yeah. Funny enough.
Typically. Yeah. No, do you give the armband to a brand new player, to a new signing?
I mean, it's a risk, but at the same time, like James Ward-Prowse is coming into the squad with Premier League pedigree. He's played 350 games in the Premier League. He's captained Southampton for the last decade. Like it's not like he's just a random. No one's ever heard of him. No one knows what he's about. No. He's come in. He's been given the armband and gone right. You're the captain. Like he's come in and people know who he is. The players will respect his pedigree within the Premier League. So it wouldn't be out of the ordinary. But I personally, I like to give it to someone who's already been at the squad, knows the squad.
Yeah.
But maybe it is Zuma. Maybe it is Zuma. It'd be nice to have an announcement, though, wouldn't it? Really, from the club.
Yeah,
One way or the
yeah,
other.
to perhaps let someone know. Yeah, I think the one thing I'm just looking at that team, and I think the problem Moyes has got is that the only player basically, or the players who are basically guaranteed to play in that team if they're fit, are Bowen, Emerson, Aguerd. It would appear Areola now, and then probably Zuma. You would say, wouldn't you? You'd say Zuma and Aguerd are our number one partnership. Obviously, that may change if Harry Maguire arrives. You never know. People would talk about him as captain. He's just left Man United. I think it's an awkward one. Often there's an absolutely obvious choice, isn't there? I think there was when Noble handed it over to Declan Rice. You know, I just don't think it. Obviously, Paqueta, if he stays, is a shoo-in. Yeah, I think it's a difficult one, but I'm glad it hasn't gone to Bowen because I'd rather him just concentrate on being our best player and not add any additional burden onto him. Whereas I think, the others a bit difficult. I'm surprised, given I know all of our supporters don't, or most of them, don't really care. And that's probably putting it lightly about the old cat kicking thing with Kurt Zouma, given the thousands of fans that sing the Kurt Zouma cat song every week. Look, I don't know. You would have thought that would have. I know fans might not be bothered, but clubs are wary of that sort of stuff. There was a lot of bad PR and stick that Zuma got. And look, I'm just going to say, rightfully so, I think. You know, I don't really like that song. I know everyone else does. Lots of people does. And probably, you know, I'm sure there's loads of people screaming, oh, what snowflake or whatever. But yeah, I'm still pretty sort of disturbed by the video in the first place. Not that I think you should sort of, you know, I'm not saying he should be cancelled and never played again, but I don't think it's overly easy to just forget about that. But anyway, do you think that would have come into Moyes' thinking, or do you think that is just a temporary sort of, what's the word, solution?
It's just difficult to say. Like we said, it might have come into thinking, but like the fact he's had the armband for one game suggests that he's in the running for it, right? If he wasn't in the running for it, then he wouldn't have been given the armband for, even if it is just for the one game. So he must be up there in the thinking. Whether it could be Maguire when he comes in, if he comes in. Again, he comes in, it's a new signing, but he's got pedigree as a captain in the Premier League. So yeah, I don't know, mate. It's difficult to call. Part of me doesn't really care as long as, like you said, as long as it's not Bowen, because you'd rather him just focus on scoring goals this season, because he's going to be the only one that scores goals for us this year. So
yeah, of course he is. Yeah. God forbid we actually have a striker who did that. But yeah, no, totally agree. And Areola for Fabianski. I know fans have been calling for it for a while. I don't know really. I don't think Areola is at all a bad goalkeeper. I think he's number one quality. No, I'm absolutely fine with him being our goalkeeper. But just as I was with Fabianski, I just feel a little bit, I don't know, just a bit like, well, you haven't done anything wrong. So, like, Fabianski hasn't done anything wrong. Like, it just seems a bit.
It was always going to happen this season. Like we bought Areola.
But people were saying that last year, mate.
We thought it was going to happen last year. We bought Areola in on loan 2 years ago, knowing that he'd probably be back up to Fabianski, and he was the cup goalkeeper. And then everyone thought, okay, well, he's had one season, and then he's gonna just replace Fabianski. Fabianski will drop in the number 2 role, and then that didn't happen. Fabianski gets another year as number 1 goalkeeper. The fact that just the thought of him then being number 2 for 3rd consecutive season, 2 years as a permanent member of the team, not just being on loan, I don't think that would have gone down too well. And he must have, when he signed permanently, he must have been told, look, you're probably going to have 1 more year as understudy, and then you're going to go in and you're going to be number 1. We probably will renew Fabianski's contract for another year. He's knocking on 40 now, Fabianski's at 38, 39. So it was a matter of time, and I think it was always going to happen this summer. And I'm quite happy with it. The only downside is that now we've got a goalkeeper that can't save penalties, which is a little bit of a concern.
Well, he did in the Man City game, the League Cup, didn't he?
He did, but then he just he dived the wrong way for every single one against Blackburn last year, and that really disturbed me, worried me.
That's
a lot.
just stuck with you, isn't it?
It's just, it was like, I know we've spoken about it a lot, but I look back at it, I remember watching it going, is this really happening? Is he doing this on purpose? Just didn't get anything right. So that concerns me a little bit. That we've now, Fabianski, you felt fairly comfortable when we conceded the penalty that he'd have a chance of saving it. He's got a good record of saving penalties. Areola, not so much. So we just can't give away penalties. Don't get into a penalty shootout, and we'll be all right. Other than that, we'll be in trouble. But yeah, I'm quite happy with him. I think he's a good goalkeeper. He's a good shot stopper.
To be fair, though, Jonesy, I will counter that with the fact that surely this means that Lucas Fabianski is now our cup goalkeeper.
It's very true. So, mate,
which means that any penalty shootouts we get in, Areola will be absolutely nowhere near him.
Maybe that's the thinking. Maybe that's it. Because we did discuss it last year.
He's done it.
Yeah, we discussed it last year before the final, or before the semi-final. If it goes to penalties, do you bring Fabianski on for Areola before? Maybe it's just to avoid that conundrum. I'll just make Fabianski the cup goalkeeper. We haven't got to worry about any of that, and he can just save the penalties. Yeah. But yeah,
regular We Are West Ham podcast listener David Moyes has heard our discussion and gone, you know what? I don't need that. I don't need the boys chatting about that again this time next year when the cup competition.
I'll make a change.
Sorry, Luke. Sorry, Lucas. You're not going to be our Premier League goalkeeper this season because you're too good at saving penalties. So unfortunately, you're not going to play in the best league in the world every week. It is going to be Big Alphonse.
But you've had a good run, Lucas. You've had a good run. Yeah, time to step aside.
If you were if you just dived out the way of a few more penalties, you'd still be in. But unfortunately, having saved a few in your time, you're out the team, mate. Yeah, no, look, I really like Areola, and I think it's been one of our strengths in the squad to have such two quality goalkeepers. And yeah, it sort of feels positive. Fabianski will be the cup goalkeeper. It's the same situation, just swapped round. And yeah, I imagine that was part of the conversation. Look, Lucas, you're still going to get loads of games because he is, to be honest, isn't he? Obviously, it depends how far we go in the domestic cups and when we get Man United or Man City in the first round of both of them. That Fabianski will probably be that's annoying because I'm not getting to any games. But
he'll get at least 8,
6 games in the Europa League, isn't there? Yeah, at least 8. You'd like to think we'd get a few more. He could be playing 13 or 14 games still, couldn't he? Realistically. Yeah. Which, I guess for at his age, I just think it's a shame. Yeah, I don't know. I just don't think he's done anything wrong. I think he's been a great servant to the club. But I also understand if Areola's going, right, come on, lads, I'm not sticking around. 1 season was all right. 2, fine. We won the Conference League last year. I played a lot. I was part of that. This season needs to be my number 1 season or I'm off. That would have been fair enough. And then if you're weighing against, well, Areola could be the goalkeeper for the next 5 or 6 seasons, but Fabianski is basically could have 1 or 2 more. Well, we just have to make, even though we're picking between, 2 equal things, it's a 50-50 choice, but rather than you're both just as good immediately, but longer term, we want to hold on to Alphonse protecting the future. So fair enough.
Yeah, I think it's also it's very difficult to buy goalkeepers in a modern game. There are very few top quality goalkeepers that are available because all the best ones, the teams they're playing for don't want to let them go because they're their number ones. It's not like with teams where they've got like 5 strikers and they could probably afford to let 1 or 2 of them go and then replace them quite easily. With goalkeepers, unless you're buying a number 2 who's quite young and has got a good future ahead of them, you're having to pay premium to take someone else's number 1. So they're very, very difficult to buy goalkeepers. That's why Areola, I think, was a bit of a steal. I think we paid like 11 million quid for it. And that was because PSG had about 15 goalkeepers on the books. They could afford it. But yeah, I think that's also in the thinking is that if you annoy Areola, then you've got Fabianski's only got 1 year left. You annoy Areola, then you've got a bit of a problem replacing him. So keep him happy. And then all you got to do is bring in an understudy. It might even be one of the youth players comes in and replaces Fabianski next summer. Yeah, no, fair enough, mate. Look, I mean, obviously it was my mates. I watched I went out with my mates on Saturday to watch all the scores and all that. And
there's another load of laughter at the fact we've got 2 goalkeepers on the bench. So Fabianski, Joseph Anang still just there along for the ride. Because we can't fill our bench up. It was a weak bench, though, wasn't it? Maxwell Cornet, Danny Ings, Thilo Kehrer, Lucas Fabianski, Ben Johnson, Ogbonna, Coventry, Mbama, and Anang. All right, Cornet, decent impact sub. I think people remain unconvinced about Danny Ings. Not really his fault. Just think he doesn't really fit the system. Thilo Kehrer, okay, reasonable as a backup. Fabianski, decent. Ogbonna, yeah, good to have him there. But Johnson, Coventry, Mbama, and Anang, I know they're likely to be the ones who don't get used. But yeah, you're hardly looking at that going, God, like, you know, if we're struggling the game, which obviously we ended up being, but if we're struggling, who's going to come on? And particularly going forward, I think Cornet, I think, is basically the only one. We've got some really good defensive cover there, but Ings just doesn't. It's just not working out for him, is it? He doesn't really fit the system. He's been asked to do too much that isn't within his skill set when he does come on, and he's like a poacher, and he's a snifter and working in and around the box. He isn't a battering ram, running the channels sort of player. And I just think, okay, well, yeah, defensively we're fine. If we're struggling to score goals, who you bringing on there? I like Cornet, but you can't. That's easy to predict, isn't it? You can't just have one player to come on and change a game every week. And if we lose Paqueta as well, then we are going to be in trouble.
Yeah, it's been our problem for years, though. We've rarely had an element of decent squad depth. Like, was it 4 years now? We've still had 2 goalkeepers on the bench for most games. Like, there's just no depth there whatsoever. Never has been. I know Moyes loves a small squad, but it's always a small squad of 14 first team players, and the rest are made up of youth players and the odd retiree who's kind of just there for one or 2 more years.
Mikel Antonio.
Yeah, and Angelo Bonner and Fabianski and all the rest of them.
So Bonner's fair enough, but yeah,
yeah. So like, that's one thing that I'd like to see addressed. Obviously, we've got 2 more players through now. Obviously, Alvarez would have been on the bench if he was ready, but he wasn't. Prowse will probably walk straight into the team, so that just gives a little bit more depth, but. You want to see 3 or 4 more players for the door, don't you? Really, just to give us a few, just more options. Because you're right with Cornet, that's predictable, isn't it? We need a wide player
to
come on and we need a wide player to come on and make a difference in the last 15 minutes because we're chasing a goal. And the other team's going, oh, all they've got is a Cornet. So when they do bring him on, because they're going to need to bring him on,
we know what's coming.
We know how to deal with him. We know what's coming. How to deal with him.
In the week, we'll just work on a plan. Right, this is how they're going to start. Cornet will come on towards the end when they need it. When that happens, we'll do this. And that's it, isn't it? Yeah, because if not, it's they might bring Connor Coventry on. Well, all right.
Yeah.
I
mean, I think just on that, just to finish that off, I think actually Mbama could be the almost like the secret weapon. You know, if you used him, because no one knows what he's about, really. Okay, he's still very raw. But you could bring him on in certain games and he could be a little bit of a secret weapon, a little bit of an unknown entity, could come in and cause a few issues for some defences. He's the only one, really, I'm looking at going, that's the one where no one's really going to know how to deal with him if he comes off the bench, if we're chasing something. But then there's a lot of pressure on him to come on and start changing games at his age and his lack of experience. But it's a potential, really. But other than that, there's nothing there.
No, that could happen, mate. I could win the lottery this week. There's potential of that happening. I mean,
it's very negative.
Ticket.
It's very negative.
No, but you know what I mean? I'm sorry. Look, I don't want it to come across like I'm slagging Divine Mbama because I think he's making really good progress. I said this on the pod literally last week. He's making really good progress. He's clearly got a professional career ahead of him. But as I said, I'm going to use the same analogy. You wouldn't be surprised, and not surprised, but the most likely thing probably would be to see him playing up front for Cardiff next season. Just some like middle of the or QPR or Luton when they go back down. Just some middle of the road championship side, and he gets on and he gets his 15 goals a season, and as they come 12th and flirt with the playoffs. Look, I'm not at all.
I think
think you'd see more of him now.
I think that
you'd be able to see more from him already if he was going to. Maybe I don't want to slag him out.
that happens if he doesn't get a chance this season. The only way that doesn't happen, and he does play for West Ham in the future, and that makes an impact, if he's given the opportunities to make the impact that we think he can have, we think he's good enough to have. If he's not given the opportunities and he's left just to either rot on the bench or leave, then he ends up becoming a mid-table championship player because he's not able to develop that ability at the top level early enough. And he ends up just kind of just drifting off into obscurity. Whereas if you give him the opportunities regularly enough in games and almost put him under pressure a little bit, make him work for it a little bit, put him under pressure, not too much, but go, right, Divine, we need a goal here. It's 1-1 away at Bournemouth. We need a goal here. I need you to go on the last 10 minutes and make something happen. We want to start the season off with a win. It's down to you, mate. But you don't put him on the last 10 minutes against Chelsea at home when we're 1-0 down with chasing equaliser, because that's too much. Because it's a big London derby. It's at home against Chelsea. But away at Bournemouth, that's when you go on and put him a little bit of pressure on him. Give something on his shoulders. But instead, it's down to Danny Ings to come in.
But that's the thing, right, isn't it? And that's what I say. We sort of, made it quite clear what we think about Danny Ings. But Mbama's no better than that. Danny Ings is still probably the go-to guy, isn't he? Which tells you where Mbama's at. And you look at Evan Ferguson, right? For example, at Brighton, 18, I think he might have turned 19 already. I'm not sure. But you would say, wouldn't you, that he has developed more and is more Prem ready than Mbama is. And again, this isn't a negative at Mbama. I'm not saying it's his fault or anything like that. I'm sure he's working his hardest to be as good as he can be. But all I'm saying is sometimes players develop a bit later or they just don't make it. All the fans who are always screaming for like Dan Potts or Elliot Lee or, any of those, even Jeremy and Ngakia. All those fans desperate. There's always the answer, isn't it? Well, so-and-so in the academy. Well, we never give them a chance. It's like, because unfortunately, the Premier League is such an elite level these days. It's like the best players on the whole planet play in that division. So therefore, and it's statistically true, the average debut age every season goes up and up and up, doesn't it? Like the average debut age of most players, particularly academy products, that's why only one in however many hundreds from Premier League academies end up playing continually and consistently for that club or another club in the Prem, isn't it?
I don't disagree. The Evan Ferguson thing, he's playing for a club. He's fortunate enough to play for a club that will give more opportunities to younger players. And yeah, you're right.
He's still got to be good enough, hasn't he?
He's still got to be good enough, but he's more likely
because he's good enough.
He's more likely to get opportunity. If Evan Ferguson was at West Ham, he'd have had half the opportunity, if not less. He'd be in the same boat as Mbama, guaranteed. And I'm not saying Mbama's going to end up and become the next Harry Kane. Absolutely not. But I'm saying that he's shown enough last season when he did play. He's shown enough, and during pre-season as well, to warrant more opportunities this season than he got last season. Give him a go. At the end of the day, these players don't develop because they're not given a chance at the top level. That's why the debut age is going up and up and up, because these players are given less of an opportunity. And it's not like this isn't like an Elliot Lee who's banged them in for the youth team and just played one game for the first team and then he got shipped off to Luton. Like this Mbama who played, I think he played eight first team appearances last season. Got a goal in the Europa League, Conference League, and he scored goals in pre-season. Like he's earned his right to get more chances off the bench in the Premier League this year, I think.
I understand, but you will be one of many fans, and I would too, if he plays and misses a few opportunities and we come 12th this year, but he develops, you wouldn't take that swap over him not playing and us signing a more ready to go off the shelf striker and us coming 7th. That's ultimately that's what David Moyes is playing with, and he knows that's the harsh reality. Everyone will go, give young players a chance, and he's like, all right, but that's not going to help me keep my job. Like here, if you're good enough, you'll play. And I just saying, I just understand, and I think it would be unwise to pin too much of our hopes on Divine Mbama, not because he's not doing his very best to be the best player he can be, but I just don't think at the end of the season, no fans will have that. If he's got a little bit better, but we come 12th, there'll be mutiny still, and Moyes will be out in his ear. But listen, Jonesy, not a great deal to report. West Ham sit 12th after that fairly underwhelming draw away at Bournemouth.